With Germany and Japan defeated, the question is, what are the Allies going to do now? The Allies had a threefold task: occupy the conquered territories, conduct trials of war criminals, and forge peace treaties. The job of occupying a defeated Germany was long and difficult. And only at one point did the Allies agree that should be done: the punishment of German war criminals. As tensions increased between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, it became increasingly impossible to frame a peace treaty with Germany itself. A month after Germany surrendered, the nation was divided into four major zones of occupation between the United States, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Each would be in charge of a sector. For example, the United States would command the southern sector of Germany. Great Britain took the northwestern part, France got the southwestern part, and the Soviet Union received the eastern part. Berlin, which was actually in the Soviet zone of occupation, was also divided amongst the four powers. The United States, Great Britain, and France would pursue a policy of allowing German officials to assume increasing authority. In 1949, the three Western zones would be combined to form the Federal Republic of Germany, with Bonn as its capital. You know it today as West Germany. The Soviet zone would be transformed into what's known as the German Democratic Republic, with Berlin as its capital. It was known as East Germany. Military occupation then ended in Western zones, but it continued to be so in the free Western sectors of Berlin, since no peace treaty uniting all Germany had been concluded. 6 months after the Germans surrendered, an international military tribunal will be held in Nuremberg, Germany, and they brought to trial war criminals and military leaders of the Nazi regime. Judges and attorneys from all four of the powers occupying Germany participated in this first of a series of trials. One of the chief prosecutors was a Supreme Court Justice of the United States. The defendants were variously charged with planning a war of aggression, using slave labor, exterminating Jews. 12 of the accused were found guilty, were sentenced to death, 7 received prison terms, and 3 of them were acquitted. In the American zone, approximately 500,000 former Nazis were convicted of war crimes. The drafting of a peace treaty with Germany was impeded by the increasingly deteriorating relations between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union. In 1955, the Western Allies signed a treaty with the 6-year-old Federal Republic of Germany, by then known as West Germany. According to the provisions, West Germany was granted complete independence, authorized to develop its own military force, and required to accept the stationing of Western Allied soldiers. Later in 1955, the Soviet Union declared the 6-year-old German Democratic Republic, then called East Germany, to be fully independent. There was a general peace treaty with Germany, was never really concluded. The result was the establishment of 2 Germanys. As with the case with Germany, the victorious powers had to deal with Japan and difficult problems of conquering this territory, of conducting war trials, and framing up a peace treaty. A commission in Washington, D.C., consisting of representatives from 13 allied nations, including the United States, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, was to direct the occupation of Japan. However, the Commission's activities were hampered by increasing animosities between the Western nations and the Soviet Union. Douglas MacArthur was appointed Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, and in that capacity, he really ruled Japan. With the exception of a small number of military forces from the British Commonwealth of Nations, the troops were Americans when it came to occupying forces. The primary goals of the occupation were to demilitarize and democratize Japan. The occupation ended in 1952. While it lasted, the Japanese were cooperative with MacArthur and his associates. Early in 1946, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East was created, consisting of representatives from 11 allied nations, and they convened in Tokyo to try 25 Japanese civil and military leaders for planning a war of aggression and committing crimes against humanity. 7 of the defendants, including the former Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, were hanged. The others received prison sentences. In addition, numerous Japanese Army and Navy officers were brought to trial for violating the rules of war. Of those accused, approximately 6,000 were found guilty. So, as the Second World War comes to an end, new animosities are going to be growing amongst the Allies. Within a few years of the end of the war, a new kind of hostility would come into existence that would shape the middle years of the 20th century. It was known as the Cold War.